Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. I'd like to wish all our viewers a very happy Independence Day. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the nation from the ramparts of the Red Fort on the occasion of the 73rd Independence Day today. This was the Prime Minister's 6th consecutive Independence Day address to the nation and the first after his landslide victory in the general elections in May. Prime Minister Modi spoke about abrogation of certain sections of Article 370, Article 35A, criminalising Triple Talaq, welfare schemes for the farmers and the upcoming mission of the government. He also said that the government would spend 100 lakh crore rupees on developing modern infrastructure that will help in nearly doubling the size of the Indian economy to $5 trillion in the next 5 years. The Prime Minister also urged people to travel at least to 15 tourist destinations within India by 2022, adding there is a huge scope to improve India's tourism sector. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze certain key aspects of the Prime Minister's Independence Day speech. Joining me on the program today are Shakti Sinha, Director, Nehru Memorial Museum and Library; Professor M. Jagdish Kumar, Vice Chancellor, Jawaharlal Nehru University; and A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director of the Business Standard. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Shakti Sinha, I'd like to begin the program with you. Probably the biggest announcement today was that of a Chief of Defence Staff. Your thoughts on that? What shape will it take? Is it going to be easy? How are we going to choose this, CDS and so on and so forth?
In fact, the announcement is a very welcome one. It's a long overdue one. It should have been done very much earlier on. But having said that, I realize the difficulties involved. We set up the Defence Ministry and a service headquarters in a particular way in the period between 1946 and 1950. At that stage itself, Mountbatten had suggested that someday you'll need a CDS after 12 years or so. Of course, it didn't happen then. We've developed differently. To have a CDS as a single point person, the single point defense advisor to the government, to the Prime Minister, means that you'll have to reorient not just the working of the Defense Ministry itself, but the working of the three service headquarters also. Traditionally, anywhere in the world, the United States or elsewhere which has a CDS, the three service chiefs then look after only the backstop operations, let me say, the staff operations, the manning, the training. They are not into operations of the armed forces, which is purely within the jurisdiction of the CDS. The way our today's three services are structured and the Coast Guard, that is not so. So I think the Defence Ministry itself has to open up, change its way of functioning, which is overdue, long overdue. And the three services, some of whom have been resisting CDS for this precise reason, they feel as a smaller service they'll be losing out to the army. That's a short-term view. Hopefully, this tough political decision taken by this government, they will be able to work out a system by which the three services feel comfortable, the Defence Ministry is able to reorient yourself, and the government lands up with having needed one chief to whom it shall talk to.
Sure.
The rest would then fall into place.
Absolutely. So, when you're talking about this one chief, Mr. Bhattacharya, how is it going to help? What shape do you think it's going to take? And for the reasons pointed out by Mr. Sinha, is it going to be difficult to implement?
Well, any organizational restructuring of this nature, which to my mind is not only was long overdue, as Mr. Sinha rightly pointed out, but is also, in my view, is quite visionary because implicit in that decision are many challenges. Challenges of identifying persons who can not just centralize everything in one's that position, but also take on board the three other service chiefs. Because the service chiefs will obviously the relative losers in this entire new structure. So it will require a humongous effort on the part of the Defence Ministry establishment, the Defence Minister, to make sure that the new experiment goes on without the initial hitches. Once the institution is set up, and I think the key is the selecting the person who is going to occupy this key position. When the moment you, instead of three service chiefs, you have one chief, and that becomes the reference point, there is this apprehension, and it's a legitimate apprehension, that is your feedback system as necessary as it ought to be, because in a three service chief which are reporting at the same time to the defense minister, you may have a situation, one person reporting what happens to the feedback that you get from the other service chiefs. So I think it is going to be an exercise that will try the management abilities of the government. But I think as a matter of principle, I think it's a very good decision.
Right.
It was long overdue, and in a sense that this is neither political nor economic. It is of a strategic significance. It also sends out a message to your neighbors and to the world at large.
Absolutely, absolutely. Professor Kumar, considering that certain sections of Article 370 were abrogated, looking at how Pakistan has been reacting in the recent past, this could be a message to Pakistan as well, the CDS, that there is going to be someone up there who's going to take care of everything, who's going to be at the helm, and there's going to be better coordination. So this is something that you need to watch out for.
Well, it is not just only a message to Pakistan. I think we need to look at the global situation also when it comes to the security of our country. There are so many instabilities happening across the globe. And of course, we have problems at our own border. And this definitely requires better coordination and strategic planning among all the three services. Now, not that only wartime is important, even the peacetime is important for our services, because this is the time when the services have to focus on technology. Better security comes only if we are better equipped from technology point of view. And I think these three services, if they are integrated, they can think in a coordinated way on what kind of technologies that we need to acquire, we need to indigenously develop, so that our forces are well equipped. I think that it's a better idea to have one single CDS, so that this coordination and strategic planning can be done, keeping our security requirements not just only in next few years, but next 5 years or even next 10 years.
Absolutely. Let's move on now to the other aspect, that of the economy. This is something that the government has wanted to take on a war footing. The government has acknowledged that there is some kind of a slowdown, but it's not something that can't be taken care of, a challenge that the Prime Minister is willing to meet head on. $5 trillion economy in the next 5 years, an ambitious target, Mr. Sinha?
It's an ambitious target, but to me it's a doable target. One, of course, is really the base factor. The moment your base is becoming bigger and bigger, at 2.8 trillion, if you add 7% a year, example, that's itself big enough. But there's nothing automatic about economic growth. Every country which thought that they are on autopilot has come to grief. So I think we have to be proactive about it. And as the Prime Minister took it on, he talked about exports not just for the large companies, how he drilled it down to the district level. Some district is good in sarees, something in handicraft, some is utensils. So you have to really look at unleashing the potential of the people. And therefore he talked about the ease of living and the ease of doing business. I think he made a very interesting point when he said that government should not come in the way also. That even for poverty reduction, he said if you empower the poor and give them dignity, they will break out of poverty. So you have to create those circumstances. So he made some point where he said that government should not be lacking, abhav na ho. Where government is required, government must be there. But where government becomes a problem, government should not be there.
Government should not be a stumbling block.
Sarkar ka dabav bhi na ho, sarkar ka abhav bhi na ho. He made this distinction between the two. And going forward, the host of measures he mentioned, whether it's in agriculture, to strengthen the farmers, the insurance part of it, whether the industries, whether even tourism that he talks about, traveling within the country a lot. These are all the steps required to really turn the country around and to take off. Because you are at a stage where many countries have reached and stumbled. So we cannot afford to stumble now. And this requires tremendous amounts of effort. Whether it was GST, making one country, one market, or he called it one country, one economy. I think a whole host of things that have to be done. And I think he indicated that it's going to be difficult, not very easy, but it is doable. Have faith. And as he says, the desperation as to 2014 is gone. People now feel it can be done.
So just to add to this one country, one economy, few more things like that. One nation, One constitution is what he spoke about. One nation, one election as well as what he spoke about. I was just adding. Yes.
No,
please.
you're absolutely right. I mean, the point is, and people misunderstood that. I'm glad you raised the point. I heard somebody say on TV that one country, one economy means you're trying to centralize. No, you're not trying to centralize. You're just removing internal barriers to growth. We have over the past 70 years created tremendous barriers to growth, entry barriers. To removal of all that, to simplify, to let the entrepreneurial spirit of the people, which Prime Minister also mentioned, to thrive, flourish, prosper, become prosperous. So whether it's drinking water, you cannot have a thriving economy where people are sick. Swachh Bharat and Jal Jeevan are required for even economic growth. They're required for social reasons, they're required for economic growth. The infrastructure, 1 lakh crores. People want 6-lane highways. Not just for the ego part of it, I want a 6-lane highway. Highways are the backbone of the economy. They move goods, they move people, they allow labor to migrate to places where they earn more wages. So I think it is a doable target, it's an ambitious target, but if we did not have ambitions, we would be floundering.
Sure. You know, this issue that I want to take forward, Mr. Bhattacharya, is this 100 trillion to be invested in the infrastructure. Firstly, of course, where is this money going to come from? Secondly, where is this money going to go? Are there going to be specific sectors? You know, is it going to go into rural India? What should we concentrate on?
Well, you know, I mean, in an Independence Day speech of the Prime Minister, I think it will probably be too much to expect the Prime Minister to lay out in broad detail how he's going to make that investment. As a matter of fact, the Prime Minister's speech from the ramparts of Red Fort is actually supposed to indicate the policy thrust, overall vision. But I think he has gone a little beyond that by indicating a figure of 100 lakh crore or 100 trillion rupees for infrastructure movement. It's very clear that when he mentioned that figure, this figure is not what the government will invest. Because if you look at the government's budgetary allocations, they were nowhere near, and there can never be as much as 100 lakh crore even in 5 years' time. I think what he was hinting at, which he did not make it very clear, is that there is an attempt and a movement in involving the private sector in a big way in a large sectors of the economies where the total investment that you're talking about will amount to be 100 lakh crore. And I think it is necessary. And let's go back to the basics. Where do we need investments? I think investments we need for the economic infrastructure, but more important than investing in economic infrastructure, which are road, ports, airports, you need investment in social infrastructure, which is on water, health, and education. And I think this 100 lakh crore is once again a figure that is good to have as a target, and try to reach that so that the needs, the humongous needs in all this social welfare sector, social infrastructure sectors, like we need investment in water. He's talking about 3.5 lakh crore of investment in piped water supply. Now, there will be similar investment requirement in the education sector. You know, I go back to his first speech, the Prime Minister's first speech on 15th of August 2014. You know, it was the mix was the same that he delivered today. There was an organizational restructuring. He announced the formation of the Niti Aayog, and then he came out with policy thrusts of Swachh Bharat, of Digital India, Make in India, Skilled India. The number of new schemes he announced today are fewer, but the water piped water scheme, to my mind, is a scheme that is waiting to be implemented.
Sure.
Because its economic component, as Mr. Sinha was pointing out, should not be underestimated.
Sure.
And the Swachh Bharat has given us a huge economic dividend. Similarly, my sense is that if you can ensure piped water supply to every household, and at a point in time where we have only 50% coverage in this country, in spite of after 70 years of independence, 73 years of independence, it's very necessary that you need to make sure. Pharma companies will not celebrate because their sales will come down, but that is not the issue here. The issue is making sure the economic component, the economic dividends are far bigger and the growth targets are achieved.
Absolutely. Another aspect as far as the economy is concerned, Professor Jagdish Kumar, is this, you know, he spoke about making local markets and local products more attractive. Right. So building an ecosystem in the rural areas as well. But he also said that we should employ global best practices and build good systems. Right. So don't cheap out on anything is what the Prime Minister is also saying, right. To everyone basically, so that we can meet global standards.
Now, you made a very important observation from Prime Minister's speech. There are three major sectors which drive our economy. Agriculture, of course, is one of the major sectors, and then manufacturing and services. So obviously, unless there is people's participation in these sectors, economy cannot grow. And that is where I think the local markets and people's participation in those markets plays an important role. Another thing that Prime Minister has mentioned is not just only ease of doing business, but it is important to improve ease of living. So he focused on sustainable living. And in that context, he also made a very important observation that we should stop using plastic. By 2022 or so, India should become no single-use plastic free country. I think some of these aspects are very important. But another issue that I would like to mention here is that if the economy has to grow, people should be skilled in order to participate in these activities. And there are going to be some sectors where automation may replace people. So people need to acquire a different set of skills in the presence of automation. I don't believe that automation will reduce the number of jobs, but new kinds of jobs will be created, and we need to prepare people to take up those new jobs. And unless we have focus on training and skilling our people, it will be difficult for our economy to grow. And I think that is what the Prime Minister is hinting at when he says that the local markets should grow. And at the same time, while you use your local markets, you also have to be aware of the newer technologies and bring them together so that they coexist and help our economy to move forward.
Certainly. Let's now talk about another aspect that the Prime Minister spoke about. A big portion of his speech focused on tourism as well. There's a huge potential as far as tourism is concerned. Shakti Sinha, what needs to be done on that front?
One, of course, is that, Swachhta is a very important part. When you go to tourist spots, you require certain minimum quality of service. The Prime Minister said that even if the hotels are not so good, please go. Visit at least 15 places or 20 places, right? Very good point. But to really sustain tourism, and tourism does create a lot of jobs. If you look at the externalities involved in tourism sector, whether it's in transportation, in hotels, in restaurants, in guide services, and therefore in food processing, it's a massive amount of externalities involved. So tourism makes a lot of sense, but you're not geared for tourism because many of the places are not well connected. Do you have good bus services where you don't have train services? Do you have decent hotels there? Can you walk around there? Are the facilities good enough? Are enough guides available who can explain things to you? You go to the most beautiful of temple isolated structure of the 9th century, one small ASI board saying this is protected monument and that is it. Now that actually has the potential to draw people, but for that it needs the government and the private sector and the local communities working together. Because we ignore the local communities. Well, local communities have got involved, and you go to many of the Himalayan states, part of Himachal, parts of Sikkim, homestays have become really extensive. And it really helps the local community. People worry about mass tourism, but homestay actually allows you to experience local life and for the locals to treat one tourist at a time rather than getting hundreds.
And it's eco-friendly too.
It's very eco-friendly. It doesn't, the carbon footprint is very low. If you make a massive building, concrete building of 10 floors in the middle of the Himalayas, that's very bad. So you can create for different places. Make sure that connectivity improves. I want to do a hotel booking. Can I do it on the net? If that village or that small town or whereas in Andaman and Nicobar does not have net facilities, how do you do your booking? How do you do your payment by card? Prime Minister said, RuPay is accepted in Singapore. We want to make it acceptable everywhere. But then for that, you require a very good internet backbone. So, the kind of coordination required for tourism is a lot. But in terms of economic payoffs, look at so many countries of the world. I mean, countries much smaller than India, much less offered to India, receive 50 million, 60 million tourists. And if you take out the NRI component from Indian tourism, we are down to 5-6 million only.
Right.
The NRI component makes it up really high, which is a good thing, of course, I'm not doubting that. But you have the potential to attract 60, 100 million tourists a year.
Right.
That is a massive jump, and it can be done.
Ms. Bhattacharya, as far as tourism is concerned, what's the potential for domestic tourism? Because there's no doubt that Indians like to travel. Majority, a bulk of them travel abroad. They spend good amounts of money as well. But what about domestic tourism?
Let me, strike a slightly discordant note here, that I think the focus on tourism is excellent. I think it's necessary. But I think we should not forget that tourism belongs to the third segment of the economic activity chain, which is the services sector. Now, you cannot have a proper, vibrant services sector if you do not have the basic backbone of the second sector, which is the industrial sector. Now, I think in our effort to boost services, we should not be ignoring what is necessary for creating the physical hardcore infrastructure for making that services, making the tourism sector really yield the desired benefits. And I have a feeling that we are probably in our desire to tap this huge potential, which indeed does exist, we should not be ignoring the core infrastructure issues, the core skilling issues, and the investment to be made in those areas. Of course, there are issues that pertain to the banking, the internet, everything, but you also need proper physical connectivity, and you need to have trained people who can actually make that tourism project succeed and help yield the kind of benefit, the dividends that it can potentially have. There is no reason why India cannot be a leader in the field of tourism, but I think we cannot ignore the basic ingredients that go behind tourism, which is creating the backbone, the physical infrastructure. It is not enough, as he was saying, that to create an ASI board, can you make sure that the connectivity to that place is made easier?
Right.
So therefore, yes, tourism is important. You must ask, but don't expect that the physical infrastructure will follow the boom in tourism. I think tourism, as a consequence of industrial infrastructure, will follow, and that is a better way of attacking tourism instead of trying to go to tourism and then go back and build roads.
Right.
First build roads and then go for tourism.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, Professor, can India become a global hub for tourism? And do you believe that we need better information out there as far as our tourist places are concerned, so that the tourists from abroad are better informed about, say, weather patterns, about facilities, and so on and so forth?
Right. Perhaps both my colleagues presented a view of people who are more urban in nature or who have disposable incomes. Yes, when the tourists come from international places, from other countries, of course they need to know information such as this, and they need to have better facilities, connectivity. But you please look at the way our Indians travel. They travel from villages and towns to a large number of religious places in our country, and these are people who are not traveling for enjoyment, not for break from their work. It is because they want to travel and see the rest of the country. So I think this tourism, focus on tourism has two dimensions. One, of course, is it can lead to national integration. When a person from Tamil Nadu goes to northeastern India, or somebody from Kashmir visits Gujarat, so it has a national integration component. The other issue is that people who travel, a large segment of our Indians who travel, they are not in the upper income group. So therefore, we need to see what kind of facilities have to be created from their point of view. The last mile connectivity for them, or even creating basic facilities at an affordable cost. These become more important for them, while of course we need to provide better hotels, better connectivity for international tourists. So we need to focus on both these things. We should not do one at the cost of the other.
Absolutely. All right. Closing comments now from all my guests on, the best way forward as far as achieving the goals of a new India are concerned? I'm going to ask you to be brief. I've got limited time on the program. Starting first with you, Mr. Sinha.
I think the way forward is very clearly was partnership. The way forward was, yes, the government will do certain things, has to do certain things, but the people must be seen as partners in it. If you give the people dignity, allow them to express their agency properly, then you can have economic growth and equity going together. And to me, that was the central message, that we have to grow. We are a fairly poor country even today. Our per capita income has to go up a lot. Our health indicators has to improve. And this will come about if you see the people as partners in growth and therefore facilitate the ease of living, the ease of doing business and all kinds of supporting ecosystem.
Take everyone along, and it is everyone's responsibility to move forward. Right. Is the best way forward, is what you're suggesting. Mr. Bhattacharya.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Prime Minister has sort of outlined a kind of a blueprint on what are the goals that need to be achieved. I think the ball is now in the court of those who are actually managing these decisions at the ground level, the second rung of political leadership as well as the bureaucracy. And I think there should be no gaps in that. If the Prime Minister wants 100 lakh crore of investment in infrastructure, then I think a blueprint needs to be readied, because you don't expect the Prime Minister to come out with the nitty-gritty of it. So it is without losing much time, because 2020-25, if it's a target of $5 trillion economy, so therefore you need to take immediate quick action, particularly at a time when the economic headwinds are rather getting strong. So therefore, without any further delay, I think it's important for the civil servants as well as the economic managers, so to say, of this government to get down to the tasks that have been outlined by the Prime Minister.
Yeah, so the Prime Minister can only show us the way. It is Absolutely. For the others really to do the work on the ground and take the nation forward. All right, Professor, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Well, the central message I see in Prime Minister's speech is, let us create opportunities for every segment of our society, be it business class, be it farmers, be it a small-scale trader. If you create opportunities for everybody, then obviously all of us feel our role in building the economy of our country. I think that is the only way we can take our country forward, by taking every section of our society together and moving forward.
All right. All right, then on that note, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.